everyone, and welcome to 2022 Relative Pitch. Oh my gosh, this is our first episode in this new year. I thought things would look a little bit different, to be honest. At this point, we started this podcast in September, October 2020, when we officially released our first episode, and we're going into 2022. And we are still in this pandemic. I just want to point that out. Did we think we would be here still at this point?
Uh, yes and no. I feel like because people just were not taking it seriously at all. I had hopes that we weren't, but reality would sit in, and we are still here. And these Omarosa, Amarians, and the Deltas airlines are all around. So
Really?
like I'm guessing the next one is going to be Katrina. I guess that's who's next
Maybe
because
Irma. Irma's coming back.
Irma's coming
Yeah,
back.
Irma. Y'all remember Irma? We got so many days out of school for Irma. Go Irma.
Exactly. Andrew, all of the hurricanes are coming back because we're just not we're not doing what we need to do.
Well, what
But
we needed to do was go on lockdown right away.
That's what we should have done, but we were gallivanting all over the
2020.
country.
but you know what? The government is not going to shut us down again
No,
because
oh
they
no.
they realize that that is not helping them, is not helping the economy. So they're like, oh no, like everybody's fine, we're great. No, people are dying.
It are.
People
Still
are
are.
dying.
I just love when the people are like, "We're gonna give you two KN95s for your semester because you're a TA." Okay, two slightly disposable KN95s for a semester. It's great, and they only gave me one. We only got one, actually, not two. We only got one.
Not they upholding their promises.
Maybe they
Uh,
saving one for the middle of the semester.
no, that no,
Yeah,
no.
maybe you get one halfway through. You just
Yeah,
have to wait.
like you use the first one, get to the second one. Peace.
Wow.
Just wrong.
I think, we were just talking about this because, as most of you know by now, we are presenting at the Georgia Music Educators Association's conference that is happening this upcoming month in about 2 weeks now. And right before we started recording, we were talking about, oh gosh, should we order a pack for all of us and even our panelists to be like, hey, stay safe because y'all know how Georgia is. I don't have to get into that. But anyway, I don't trust half the people who are going to be at this event. I'm trying to keep myself safe, like everyone should be at this point. Thankfully, the Classic Center has some great safety protocols, so hopefully we'll see. But it's real. We are still out here doing the same things that we should have been doing in the first place, but here we are. But anyway, we just hope this new year brings to everyone, a fresh start with anything, all the endeavors you have to do. We hope you reach them, all the goals you have, all the things you want to see yourself become them. If you're going to work out, diet, sure, maybe, whatever. But I mean, just do your thing.
Stick to it. Stick to
Stick
it.
to it. Yes, absolutely. Well, there has been a lot of stuff going on within the community. It seems like from January or December to now, there's been so many things that has happened, and the purpose of this podcast is to talk about these things, to talk about the things that are going on in our music society that relates to what's going on everywhere in every single other field that's going on out in the world. So we were grateful enough to be able to go to Midwest this past December, and it was great seeing all of our guests we've had on the show and running into them, and they're like, "Oh, guys, it's Relative Pitch. It is us." And it was wonderful getting to just meet everyone in person, and the beauty of that is that I think not having it really made us appreciate just being able to come together and to see everyone. And there was a theme for the year, or a theme for the conference this year. If anyone noticed it, I noticed it. A few people noticed this theme this year. What did you guys think about Midwest?
Anthony.
Not you defecting to me.
Ooh.
Um, one thing what you said is my first thing was um I could tell people were just excited to be back. A year that was canceled because of COVID. Really, a lot of people look for Midwest to see friends, that is across the country. Um, so Midwest that's what it's for. One thing I did see is I saw a lot more uh, colors of the spectrum, as in race, which I loved seeing because for a while I was like, where are non European people? Where are they on this level? And so it was just good seeing that. And a lot of the sessions that I went to were very informing. Um, but I did notice that a lot of the sessions ended up kind of circling around diversity. And I think that is the thing that we are talking about a lot in music nowadays is the word diversity, equity, and inclusion, which have become three words that can scare some, that I think has been beat over the head in some ways. But it definitely a lot of things were hitting on that topic.
I will agree, but I will go further back than Midwest. That was 2021's campaign slogan
Mm.
was DEI from the
Mm,
get go.
mm. And this is true.
Communities, just
It seems like everywhere, like every single company has an opinion on DEI these days. Like why does Kleenex have a statement on DEI? You know what I mean? There's a joke there. I think comedians have been doing jokes about that, but it's kind of true where there it seems like everyone felt like they had to make a response or had to make a statement addressing these things. And while it's appreciated to some degree, I like action more than I like words. I don't really care to see statements put out, especially by corporations who have the financial backings to actually do something about DEI. I don't want to hear you talking. I don't want to see you posting on Twitter about stuff. I don't want to see a black square with hashtag BLM on it. I want to see the things you raise, the money you get, going towards the things that you're saying you advocate for. And I don't think that's a big thing to ask for. I think that makes sense, having money and wanting to donate it to the causes that you say you support. Um, but going back to this theme we had in Midwest, and there were some amazing sessions that were being done and centered around this, and so many things I learned because they were given this platform, or this subject was given that platform,
Wait,
and people.
but some of them were actually guests of this show. So we have to go ahead and speak about William Lake, Ars Golden, we have Emily Eng, Dr. Cynthia Johnson Turner. All of them I got to see their sessions, and it was just so good because they were on the show, and now they're presenting their sessions, which were phenomenal. So it was that part is always fantastic.
Yeah, we when you are a guest on this show, you are always family. You will always be family. So we will support you, and that is it just kind of grows now. Relative pitches everywhere, and it's wonderful. But we love to see the people we have on succeed in everything they're doing, and they're just making the music community just so much better because of those things. And it was needed. Every single session that we saw and that our guests did, we it resonated with us, obviously, right? Um, and something in one, I think it was Dr. Lake and Emily's session that they were talk or someone stood up during a Q&A and spoke about was never would they have imagined that they would have seen sessions like that at the Midwest convention. And that really said something to me because it shows how when we think that we're so far away from the past and the things that have kind of shaped us now, not really. You know, we're still getting to the first of all of these things, and it's 2022, right? Um, so while these things are amazing and they're great, these are the conversation starters, is all this is. We are only just starting to peel back the rug from this, but we have to continue actually putting in the action. The people who are doing these sessions, They are doing the work. They've been doing the work, you know? And the people attending those sessions, it's wonderful, right? You got that knowledge. Now, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to apply that to your job, your education, in your classrooms? Like, how are you going to apply that? Um, and so, while that did seem to be a central theme of it, there were people who thought that there was still a lacking on certain aspects of Midwest. There was a post circulating that got a lot of people to think really about how diversity has been addressed within the music community. And I think we've all had our differing opinions on the ways that DEI has been addressed. What are you guys' opinion? What do you see when you see DEI in music? What do you see?
A sham half the time. Why does there need to be a committee especially for this? Why don't you make your committee what it needs to look like? Why do you need a like? Why do you have to? I don't know. And people being asked, like certain people being asked to be on certain committees. Why weren't they just asked to be on the committee in general?
Hmm.
Like, and then also, why just now is there all these sessions? Is it because of the incident in 2020? I think so. I won't be able to judge anything dealing with diversity until 2026. Then we can see if something changed.
Hmm.
Until then, until these buzzwords go away, we won't know what changed and what's not. Because I saw all those sessions. They're great. I loved it. Didn't resemble anything else apart the conference or any other conference that may or may not come this semester. So yeah, 2026. I'll see y'all then.
So the diversity in the sessions, but you're saying the diversity in the performers and the composers of
And the
these
presenters.
performance, the music, the presenters.
Right.
The sessions had great buzzwords: diversity, equity, inclusion, how to make things diverse, yada yada yada. But who's presenting on those sessions? I I just attended the Florida Music Educator Association conference, and one thing, and this can go either way, but when I see something that says a survey of hip hop music that can be incorporated into your classroom, in my head, I would think, what culture is
Mhm.
hip hop? Not saying that other people cannot like hip hop and everything else, but what culture is it from? Naturally, the people who where it's from, who was brought up, who was listening to this music, who would y'all think should be giving a session like this?
Someone who lived it.
Someone who is a part of the culture.
Hmm. So the culture of hip hop music is predominantly Black.
Mm.
So that's what I would think would be the person who would be giving a session like this.
You would
But
think.
I look on the check the thing and I'm like, oh no. And which brings me to the point that we had with Dr. Kerr, the a comment that I asked her. I said, you know, when I see R&B or hip hop musicologists in the academic field, they're never people that look like me that grew up on this type of music. And she gave a brilliant answer to that of what it's because of the systemic racism that is in academia, because it we never get to that end goal of having that doctorate degree to present on the topics that we know truly intrinsically we know this type of music. And so that also becomes the issue at these presentations is here are keywords hip hop, like, oh my God, my students are going to love this. But who's presenting that? Is it presenting very authentically?
Or is it very academic driven?
Right.
Exactly. And what you just said, and that this kind of goes into also like the field of ethnomusicology as well, and how research is conducted, right? I've learned the difference between research on or about versus research with, by, and for. So the difference is when you're doing research, so let's say these people or people who are doing clinics on hip hop, how to bring hip hop into your classroom, and they're not, as you said, a part of the culture. How are you gaining that information? And I want you to ask yourself why you feel like it's your duty to present that information. Because if you think about it, and this is where my thing about allyship and also white saviorism it starts ticking for me, because I get the whole thing of saying, well, like, I understand that there are people who should be presenting this stuff who aren't, so I want to do that on their behalf. Don't do that. How about you help them get to the place where they can present on the information that affects their culture? That is my thing. That's
Mm.
my thing. I can read so many things about Navajo music and music of like Spanish culture and all these things, but you won't see me presenting on it. Why? Because there are people who are from those cultures who have way better expertise on that and personal first perspective where they can speak on it better than I ever could, no matter how much research I did on or about them. They deserve to present their own information, their own findings. And that is what really gets me about those types of things. It's like, how did you find that information? Who did you get it from? Who did you actually get it from? Because it's the same thing that it still just benefits who? Who's getting the recognition for doing that work? Because do they really, when they present that stuff, do they make sure like you have to go back and give like credit and give like a claim to the culture that I'm getting this information from? Like, do you emphasize that? And then if you even do, are the people you're speaking to, do they understand that? Will they actually do that? Or is there still a stigma around hip hop and rap and the people who are actually in that culture? That's all I got to say about it. Keep doing your work or whatever, but at the end of the day, you know who is better equipped to be presenting that information.
Before somebody come for me in the comments, I'm not
Oh,
saying that
please
that
do.
person. Well, let me not attack the person who gave the session.
No.
I'm not coming for you. All I'm saying is that, and I don't know the person at all. I briefly read the person's bio. Um, do you? I'm just saying, in my head, the first thing that came to my was like, mm. And just as what Lauren said, I'm pretty sure there are people in that community I would know that would love to give a session on this, because this is the stuff that we grew up on.
Mm,
That I could say, well, this is that, and that is this, and this is why, because it's authentic.
mm,
So that is when that becomes a problem.
To piggyback, we also have to look at our big name pop culture stars and ding them when they don't give credit.
mm,
It's
Absolutely.
at fault with
mm.
everybody else. It's not just in the academic sense. If anybody borrows from a culture, uses information from a culture, please give credit
Mm.
Yep.
at all times, no matter what. Thank
That
you.
is true. No, that's a part of the conversation. That is a part of the conversation. It's just making sure that whatever you are referencing, no matter if it's your research paper, your music video, your art portfolio, you give the acclaim and you give recognition to the cultures or groups that you borrowed that culture or the findings, or influence from. So, no, again, this is not us saying you can't present on things that are not from a culture you are part of. But at the same time, again, I wouldn't feel right presenting on something unless it was, on that level of going to an international conference and presenting on something, or a national, whatever, a huge conference where you're presenting on something where people are going to be associating your face with that topic. That's what happens, right? You go to sessions and you think, oh, this person presented on this topic, and so and so and so. If that was something that was important to a conference or an organization to have that like represented, then you should understand how it's going to look to the people. Like Anthony mentioned, when he thinks hip hop, who do you think about, right? So it doesn't sit right. It doesn't sit right. Um, we've had this conversation before about group singing spirituals and everything. You know exactly what we said about that. You know exactly what we said. So it is not gatekeeping in any way. It is understanding that you will never get the same amount of information that you would get unless you get it from the source, is what I'm saying.
I also want to challenge our audience. Can you drop some hip hop scholars in the chat
Right.
that are not musicians?
Mm.
Because they understand a lot more than we think they do. They understand more than we do.
That's a
So
whole.
if you can drop them, please drop them. Because I'm thinking of one in particular I want someone to drop. That, oh,
And I,
and I just got my little birdie saying to me the other day and said someone near where I spent a vast majority of years recently is writing a hip hop paper. And they are in the region of one of the best hip hop scholars and hottest hip hop scholars right now, who are not musicians. How much want to bet they did not collaborate?
Mm.
So all I'm gonna say is, if you can name some hip hop scholars, you're the number one.
And so, this, or I mean, Anthony, you go ahead and I'll just give my thought.
and I was just gonna say, if you can name a hip hop scholar that when you read the bio and everything else, and you can say they know the culture,
Mm.
bonus points. Because you could easily find a hip hop scholar that is probably like, I guess I'll do this for my doctoral presentation, I guess.
Mm.
I need somebody authentic.
And you can tell when they're not. You can tell when they're not.
Piggybacking off authentic, live performances are coming back. So
Mm.
happy. So happy. I love them. I love seeing packed houses. Like at a couple of the concerts at GMA
Midwest.
Midwest,
Mhm.
packed houses, people standing. Some of them concerts were too long. I got bored.
Most concerts are only 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Michael can't sit through anything.
But it was great music going on. But that brings me to my next point. But I'm gonna let Lauren go first because I want to talk about the performers at Midwest.
And that's exactly where I was gonna go. And that's the post that we're referencing, that came out highlighted this about a certain demographic of where a lot of the presenters, especially bands, were from. And so, I mean, Anthony, this is your realm. Talk to
Yes,
us.
yes. So first, the post that we were referencing is by individual named Michael Mikuka. I believe I pronounced that right, hopefully.
Yeah.
He is a horn teacher in Pflugerville ISD, in which these are his takes from the 2021 Midwest Clinic. And so one thing, he had a lot of bullet points, and I'm just going to briefly read over the first one. He said, a phrase that I heard in multiple diversity clinics this year was, who is missing from the room? But I never heard an actual accounting of who was missing from the convention we were participating in. Here is a non-comprehensive list of marginalized groups that were missing from the 2021 Midwest Clinic. For Hispanic and Latin musicians, there were 4 out of 185 band pieces were by Hispanic/Latin composer. 35 would be representative of the US population.
Mm.
35 of those 185 would technically represent what the entire US population would be.
Mm.
Another 4 out of the 185 band pieces were conducted by Hispanic/Latin conductors. 35 would be the representative of the US population. 10 out of the 213 band clinic presenters were Hispanic. 40 would be the correct answer. Thank you. There were no Middle Eastern musicians represented, no indigenous musician represented, no trans/non-binary musician to the knowledge of me or him, none of the disabled musicians, never really talk about that. But this is where, as a band director, I want to focus on. Bands from 43 states were not represented, while 10 out of the 17 bands were from Texas. And bands, directors, presenters from cities and rural areas were largely missing. While
Mm.
band directors, presenters from wealthy white suburbs were disproportionately represented. Bands from poor areas are dramatically underrepresented, and poor musicians are almost certainly underrepresented given the cost of attending. Could there be potentially scholarships for poor composers, conductors, and funding for Title I school bands to travel to slash perform at Midwest? So I want to focus on the band part because this Midwest clinic, first of all, is supposed to be international.
Mm.
Okay. 10 of the 17 comes from Texas. There are 50 states. 50 states in this United States, and 43 of them are not represented. That seems a big issue to me because what you're saying is, oh, these other 43 states, they don't have good bands.
All right, I'm gonna be real for a second here. We know what's up, okay? There's no sugarcoating what goes on in majority of these conferences and these international conferences. There is a majority, and then there is everyone else, and it's something that is known and that just continues to happen because no one actually knows, or if they people are letting it happen, and that is how things continue to happen. Is we know everyone knows, and then it just continues on. It's a systemic thing, right? And so no one's surprised that 10 of the 17 bands of this international conference were Texas bands.
Uh,
And listen, I mean, Texas has a. We went to some of those performances. Y'all hot. Y'all got it. The kids are doing amazing things. The music you're picking for them, it's a great show of the things that they can do. Um, but there are other groups who can play like well, and also you have to think about resources, right? And this, so he something I really like that he said was he addressed the Title I situation of how a lot of those bands who maybe would want to be able to do that or that would have been selected for wouldn't have the funding. The parents wouldn't have the money to even send their kids to it. The schools and the districts may not have the funding to support an arts program or a band program like that to do something like that. So I
as a
mean,
person from a rural school,
mm,
first of all, as a teacher, I paid out of my own pocket to attend Midwest. My school did not send me to Midwest.
mm,
And that's very common in rural schools. And let me just say, Midwest is not cheap. Flying
How
to
much is that
Chicago,
registration?
so gosh, yeah,
was
what?
How much is
200,
the registration?
275?
Yeah, that's for working people.
But yeah, for a band director, or any director that is attending that, that's a lot. And then to think of bringing children, kids there for people that are not in that general location of the Midwest, we got to talk about either a charter bus,
Mm,
a flight,
mm, mm, mm.
getting your
Food.
parents. Now, one thing, and here's another thing. When I was in these Texas bands, literally rows and rows and rows were parents that
Yes.
were able to afford
Mm,
to bring their child, and able to accompany their child. I'm gonna tell you right now, in rural schools, that's something we have issues with is
That
parent
ain't it.
participation.
That ain't it. They gotta work.
They gotta work. They gotta do other stuff. They have other children sometimes that they have to provide for as well. They can't just take 3 days off of work. So, but what we're doing is we're now placing, if you have money and you come from this demographic and you come from this area, you are good. If you don't, you are just going to always stay here. That is what that is coming off to me as.
mm,
And it is very unfortunate because there are students in these rural programs that can be better and at best just as much as the people that were on that stage. but they will never get that opportunity because they were not giving the silver spoon when they were born.
There,
That's came from a clinic that is supposed to be inclusive,
Mm.
that is supposed to raise up the bar for band, for orchestra, for music in general.
you know, Anthony, this is a question for you. Was there or has there been in our years that we've been attending an HBCU band ever play a concert?
No.
That is a that is a big that's tradition. That is a heavily steeped tradition of HBCU bands that could educate us on just the way they do things. They do things better than us sometimes. They sound phenomenal.
Now, just because I just came back from the FMEA conference, I got on y'all earlier, but I got to give it to you now. I got to give you praise because the opening general session to the Florida Music Educator Association conference was first the Junkanoo band, which is the Junkanoo band. The Junkanoo, yeah, band is from the Bahamian tradition. If you ever go to the Bahamas, you know, they have all the feathers and like the tuba, the drums, and everything. That was literally how Dr. Shelby Chipman, the director of bands at FAMU, that was his procession. It was so good seeing that. First of all, that's a different culture. That's a different culture of band.
Right.
Bahamian culture, which is not the US what we would think. Second thing, next thing we hear is the whistles, the drums. We see orange and green coming down that convention center ballroom, marching the FAMU marching 100
Mm.
was there, performing to the best of. I was on my feet, chills, everything, hearing that sound, that wall of sound. That is how you show a culture.
Mm-hmm.
The opening session, first of all, has a culture that is not United States, and then show a culture that is underrepresented in this United States.
Well, what did you have something else?
Oh no, I'm just saying, good job, FMEA, for that.
Like I want to. I like would love to go up and ask a bunch of people at like a marching competition. What do you think about them?
Oh, I'll tell you, because I've heard it. I've heard it. The first thing is, oh no, we don't do that because you know they play too loud, or they're not doing traditional core style marching and this and that. Okay, but whoever said that was the right way?
Mm.
Whoever said that was the only way? It's coming out very racism to me.
And there's
Really.
one band in particular in Georgia that when me and Anthony and Lauren were in high school was an amazing band. And when we got to KSU, they were still an amazing band. That was usually picked under something like any Cobb County band ever. And they had a sound. That's
Sound.
it. They had a sound. No
Mhm.
private lessons for a vast majority of them
Mm.
Which
because they couldn't afford it.
we need to talk about because these Texas bands, when you
All
look
take
at
private lessons if you want to get in the top band. You
if
cannot be in the top band of the majority of the big city Texas schools without taking private lessons. So that automatically, I hate this word, by the way, I'm just going to say it. I hate gatekeeping. I hate the word. But like that is withholding of an opportunity.
I mean, all that to say, and I think Anthony hit on this earlier, like how these groups that they pick for these conventions, how that what they're supposed to represent, right? They're supposed to represent musical excellence. What is considered musical excellence? So, in order to be musically excellent, you have to have a lot of money. You have to have a program where majority of your students' parents can pay for not only their child, but their student to attend these international conferences. Um, You have to have three minimum band directors per program to do any of this stuff. All your students have to be in That is what they're saying. And even if you don't think you're saying it, indirectly by choosing the bands and the groups you do, you are saying that. That is what you're saying.
And
And then what great, musical excellence. I have a problem with so many words. Anyway, Anthony.
so the post, first of all, he just touched on so much. So much. I'm just gonna just name a couple things that also just kind of took my eye. He says there's a lot of focus on increasing diversity, but diversity without equity or integration is more likely to benefit those in power than those it is purportedly lifting up. So that goes back to something we've talked about before, where are we are we having this conversation for the white crowds, for them to feel more comfortable?
Hmm.
And he actually bring this up as well. Um, are we just doing this for other people to be comfortable? Is this what this is for? At the end of this, I remember him saying something about he talked to some big people in our profession, and they would say, "Oh, you got to be patient. We're in it for the long road, and this and that."
It's been a
And
long road.
huh?
I said it's been a long road.
Yeah.
And this is where he got them together. I this right here, this was a sermon. He said, "Patience is a privilege that most
Mm.
younger, less established composers don't have.
Who Jesus?
Patience is a privilege. The long road, we don't have the long road." What and this is a personal thing about me is because I'm always looking. I know what I want to do for
Mm.
my end goal for my career, and the first thing that people say, "You're young. Why are you going so fast?" I go, "Why? Patience is a privilege
Mm.
that a lot of us people of color and anybody who is marginalized, we don't have that same patience. We don't have time. We don't. Because one of my favorite singer, Erica Badu, she says, "Time is wasting."
Mm.
Wasted. And one thing, if anybody wants to be like, oh, but you're not providing a solution. Quick solution. Midwest has a lot of people that works for it. They have a huge board of directors, blah, 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 blah. Get a team
Mm.
of grant writers. And then if a Title I program applies, and they get, you reach out to, you give
Yes.
an open call. If you want to come to Midwest, apply. If
Mm.
they get in, you get your whole team of grant writers and you start writing grants. And you try to make them there because you have the ability to get people to write grants. That's
Yes.
not without your ability. Have an open call for grant writers. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of people, or I would like to hope, there's a lot of people in our field that would write grants and take time out of their day to write grants for these bands or
Absolutely.
orchestras. Or like even if we go to ACDA for them choirs, for anybody we want to see diversity. Like, yes, Texas, you're great. I want to hear an Alaska band. I want to hear a South Dakota band. Maybe a Nevada. Like, let me hear a band. You know what state I always forget about? Wyoming. Let me hear a Wyoming band.
You know what I'm saying? I forget about Vermont. Who lives in
Vermont.
Vermont?
Hear Vermont. Let me hear a Vermont band.
Let me
Maybe
hear.
a Minnesota band. Who knows? Maybe. I don't
They're
know.
right there. Like, why? I have never heard of a Illinois band being there or Minnesota. They're right there.
I never heard of them.
Right.
I know after being in Michigan, there's a lot of these band directors who teach 6 through 12, and that's the norm. And that's the
Mm.
norm a lot of places. I was lucky. I think we all were lucky. Texas, great program, enriched in education. Georgia has a good education program as well, and there's less 6 through 12 programs. And
Mhm.
that's just like the importance that, even though it's not that like not felt importance in Georgia, but you have more importance on music in Georgia than they do up here in Michigan, or they do in Wyoming maybe, or Vermont, or like there's 6 through 12 programs floating around this entire US, and you can just be like, wow, they don't care if one person has to do everything.
Mm. Mhm.
I'm
They don't want to invest.
I'm
You
literally
invest in
living
two
the
different
DI.
people, you invest in two different people, the numbers will come. You build a field, they will come. You put out an open call for every Title One band to apply, they will come.
Mm.
What y'all are talking about, and this is why the buzzwords that are buzzing are no longer, they don't work anymore. The buzz or the word or words or the practices and ideas that should be floating is accessibility. And that is exactly what y'all were talking about. The allowing for the schools to have the access to be able to play at those conferences, to be able to take their students to those conferences. And yeah, in terms of, I liked what you said about do an open call, go to them, go to those schools, say, hey, we want you to apply for this, because if you do and and you get accepted, we will get you here financially, because after $275 to register, y'all got the money to allow for these schools to come here. You
That's
absolutely do. And there are so many grant writers in the world right now, so many people who can do that, who have that expertise and that skill, who would love to write and help for something that is so worthy of a cause like that. So it goes back to that, if you wanted to do it, you would do it, you would find a way, and this is a way. These are the solutions, these are the things that you should be thinking about that should be happening in those exec board meetings that y'all are having where you're talking about DEI. That's what y'all should be talking about, is how do we get more of those underrepresented groups into into our clinics, into our presentations, into our performances, our concert spaces. How do we do that?
Is there
and
a committee for this at their level? Do they have a DEI committee?
I'm sure they have a
I'm pretty sure they
chair.
do, but yeah, I
I
mean,
hope not, because like, why are you gonna make a whole committee? You're probably not gonna hear them out. Put the people you need to put in the actual committees.
the
Don't
heads
create
of
another
one
committee, because
committee.
that's another. They have to go through more red tape. That
Yeah.
committee has to present its information to you. Why do they have to do that? Put them in the right committees that they belong in. If they're a conductor, put them in the conductors committee. I will give one flower. I'll give one flower to Midwest. Imani was
Oh,
it.
tore it up.
Imani was it. I was enthralled. My jaw was dropped, especially by the fabulous bassoonist Monica.
Mm. Mm.
Yes,
Everybody was great, but she had this flair, this energy, and she
Yeah,
wanted you to come up there. She wanted you to come talk to them.
yes.
They all did, but like this, if you didn't see them, you missed out.
you did.
Sorry, not sorry. It was an hour and a half concert. There was never a dull moment,
Never.
Never.
Not one.
but there
No.
was a dull moment later that evening.
But also giving them the opportunity to also be able to teach.
Mm.
Went to that session too and learned so much. And also what I loved about it is that it taught these teachers that you do not need to have a certain lip size to play a woodwind instrument
No, you do not.
Or a brass.
or a brass.
Yes.
So, because that's what we're told when we're going through, as literally year ago, if you want to go back to our previous episodes when we talked about, the whole bassoon gate, um, you have to have a certain structure to your face and economic status to be successful on these instruments. And I said, no, no. And so, but that brings me to my next point of there's a person, Julie Patterson Duty. She actually, I don't know if the Facebook post is a response to the earlier Facebook post that we were speaking on, but she had some very good points and that just want to say. She titled it, "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She said there's a lot of criticism, but especially of music conferences going around right now. Those in charge hold huge responsibilities, to be sure. If you're leaning in on criticism, though, I hope you're also thinking, what can you do?
Mm.
One, there are many, many underrepresented voices, but those people who would be amazing at sharing new perspectives often don't know it. or don't think they would ever get picked. Conference leaders can only choose from the sessions applications they receive. She says, help someone apply, which
Mm.
goes back to what we were talking about with hip hop earlier today. What you need to do if you know somebody, help them apply. Number two, director is a huge job. She says she saw over 320 junior high school kids every single day at one point. It becomes overwhelming. It really does. However, you can still find new music. All you have to do is create a post and say, I know a ton of music people and almost she has never really seen. Have you heard of this post? So her suggestion is please share and celebrate pieces by underrepresented composers that you may know. Make it easier for other directors to find them. Extra points go to people that can give those pieces grade 2 through 4, not grade 6, not for no collegiate group. Okay.
Mhm.
Because y'all love to do that. Y'all love to be like, oh, this is the underrepresented composer. Well, what did they write? Only for college.
Mm.
What? Number three, if you are not happy with the attendees at the conference you attend, invite new people. 4, if you're in a decision-making room, look around, choose your moment, be polite, respect whoever invited you in, and get the door open to someone who is missing. And I will never forget, Dr. Lake said this a year ago about, yeah, I think he was on a board for CPNA first,
Mm.
and then he opened the door for Dr. Lake.
Dr. Golden.
Oh, sorry. Why am I saying Dr. Lake again? Dr. Golden.
Yeah.
Um, and then they opened the door for more. And it's funny because he said, you know, we were sitting on opposite sides of the room.
Mm.
But when it became time to make our vote and our voices, that's when the shakeup happened. So look around the room, see who's not there, invite them in, get them there on these boards, because that is what is necessary for change.
Not on a DEI committee. Just put them on the committee.
Correct.
Committee.
Exactly.
Also, I will reference that. Yes, you have a full-time job. Yes, band directing is a bit different than a full-time teaching job. That does not give you so much leeway for a student to tell you what you should be playing. If a student comes up to you with a suggestion of music that you've never heard, the student has a full-time job being a student.
Mm.
It is your job to make sure their education is everything. I know it's a heavy burden. It's a heavy burden. And a lot of people don't talk about this. But if you're not creating the classroom you need to reassess your life. Maybe don't go to that brunch on Sunday, every Sunday. Maybe make that your music time. Yes, reach out to your folks. Don't make other people do it for you. It's not their job. Never make a student do your heavy lifting.
And that's something I'll with that is whenever these things happen, I don't want to have to tell you something that you could have been able to Google yourself. In terms of when someone says, okay, well, how can I find, there's so many resources that people have created on how to find composers, like databases of composers who you can find by ethnicity, race, like gender, all these things. We're even presenting, and we have a resource list we're giving at GMEA for this. So with this idea of shared knowledge, also this is a huge thing that has been coming from that same March, that summer of 2020, where I've had so many people asking, people being like, well, tell us how to do it, tell us how we can do it. Don't burden me with educating you. Do not burden me with educating you all the
That's not my
time.
responsibility.
That's not my responsibility. There's a time and a place for those things. But when you expect for minoritized people to all the time be telling you how to find things that is accessible, that you can go find with one click, that is my first thing. And I can preach on that, but I won't. Second thing, her number 3. If you're not happy with the attendees at the conference you attend, invite new people. That's wonderful. We still haven't talked about accessibility yet. That's my only thing I will say about that. You can invite whoever you want to. You can say, hey, come to this thing. That's great. Then they go, I can't afford that. So then again, it goes back to the conference that is happening. How you have to think to yourself, how are you denying access to certain people, to certain groups because of that price tag that comes with being at those conferences and participating at those conferences? Because then you're saying, well, what can I do? I can't afford to send an entire Title I school to Midwest. I can't. I cannot
Oh,
as an individual.
I got a question. So, do anybody remember how many band directors and orchestra directors attended the conference this year or last or in years prior?
I have no idea.
Can we find that number? Because I remember, I think it was 2019. They were so excited about, oh, we had this many thousand of people attend the conference. But okay, let's do some math. And actually, um, so a pre-registration rate is between 145 to 175. If you register on site, it's 199. That is if you are a professional, meaning you are a teacher, you have to almost pay from 150 to $200 just to attend this conference. So let's just say 5,000. Let's just say 5,000 band director internationally attended this conference. $5,000 times, let's just say 175. Let's cut it in the middle. How much money is that?
175. Like,
$875,000. Where the hell is that going? Don't say the convention center or because okay, that might take away what? Maybe 10 grand, maybe more, just 20. Okay, I'm still above $800,000. And correct me if I'm wrong, but does Midwest even have like other like what they might do throughout the year for bands and orchestras? Like, do they have any educational things besides just this conference?
I don't hear about Midwest until it rolls around in the fall. Yes, Michael.
So, the Midwest Clinic offers guests interested in music education. The conference will focus on industry trends with more than 18,000 attendees.
So that's
18,000
Let's take
times.
5,000 away for presenters and performers because they don't have to pay.
Right, so
okay.
18,000 minus
13,000. 13,000.
13,000.
Let's take 3,000 away for let's take 1,000 away for high school students who can come because there's a high school institute. They pay a different rate. Let's take 2,000 away from college because they pay $50. So we're left with 10,000.
So let's say,
10,000 times 175.
wait, you said 10,000 times
That's
170.
1.75 mil, the 1.75 million, right?
So this is what I'm going to say
Almost
about
$1
this.
million.
These posts like this, or that notion in number three, the whole, if you're not happy with attendees at a conference you attend, invite people. My problem with things like that is these corporations and institutions like to put it back on the working people, that you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough. You could be inviting more people. You could be sharing these things. You are making over 1 million, and you know they made more than that. Oh, they made more than that. So you're saying that it's
Oh,
on me?
wait,
Oh,
we're not, we're
I
not
forgot. Every booth you see is
every
more
move.
than that. Is more than that.
Also,
Also,
Advertisement.
also,
the small
performing
Advertisement.
groups, performing groups have to pay a registration price. They have to pay. Conducting symposium have to pay $300 just for
and then all
Advertisement.
those conductors have jobs. That's not what it started out as. That is not what I wanted it to become. I'm not even a conductor, but now I see people. I see people who have jobs, like whole
when you say
job.
jobs, you mean like director, like
Sorry,
university
they
professor.
have university director jobs doing this symposium, taking an educational opportunity away from students. You are colleagues with the people. You should be colleagues with the people you're being like clinic
Clinic
buy.
buy.
Go
Mhm.
be colleagues with them. Go talk shop. Let students do this symposium, not working professionals.
But even then, the pay that you just added all booths, advertisements, performance application fees, everyone's registration fees for all that stuff. That we can't even fathom the amount of money they make per conference year, and then they want to put it back on us that the reason why we're not seeing the diversity or the equity or whatever that we want to see is because we're not doing enough. That is why I have a problem with ideas like that of like you have to do that. That's great. I can invite whoever I want to invite, but then when they hit me with the I don't have the money to do that. I don't have the funding to do that. They do. The Midwest Conference has
Midwest
the money to
has
do
money.
that.
They
So
could
don't
even
talk to me.
But yeah,
Talk
man,
to them.
I will urge, and last thing I will say on this episode, I urge every student who has been asked to help with diversity, don't.
Mm,
Make them do it. Make them do it. And if
I'm
they choose
tired.
not to, it's their choice. Look at the choice, say check yes in your box. Do not do it, because then you're caving. You're doing the work for them. Also, if you're not happy with the conference, stop going. You're
Mm.
probably not going to learn that much anyway. Let's see what happens when less people attend because they're not getting what they're supposed to get. Just go to Chicago for a week. Just go to Tampa for a week. Go to Atlanta for a week. It's not in Atlanta, but still, just go to Atlanta for a week. Go to
right.
San Antonio for a week. If the conferences are not giving what they're supposed to be giving, leave.
And if they are
And
not
that will make a
representing,
choice.
if they're not representing
Mm.
what your population of your school looks like,
Mm.
don't go.
Leave.
What are they going to offer you? What are they going to give you that's worthwhile?
Leave.
But
Anyway,
you know what? What we're going to do, first of all, this topic would never be done. It
never.
would never be done. But you know what we have to do? We have to provide love. Y'all see my
Mm.
jacket? Love.
Wow.
Love. That is the word. Because you know what? I've become a person who is like, I'm good on you. I'm good on this. Because you know what? It's too much. It's too much. And always coming to a symposium where you feel like you have to represent your entire culture,
Mm, 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 mm.
that's not a good feeling at all. There's a lot of things that are wrong with allegedly professional development for musicians. There's a lot of things wrong with that. And who is that catering to? Because
Mm.
it's not catering to the the population of music teachers out here.
I teach a trumpet methods class to education majors. I told my students on the first day, it's on y'all's shoulders to be different. If you want to be different and you see a problem, be different. Don't fall into the same mold. Don't do it. And I explicitly said, do not look at a child's face and say they cannot play the trumpet.
Mm.
Because I didn't teach you that. I taught you how to make it work. If they want it, they'll make it work.
And my last thing I will say on this before I close this off is the idea of yeah, like whenever someone approach, if you are a person of a minoritized or a community or a marginalized community, and an organization, an institution approaches you about being on their DEI committee, whatever that means for them, think about when they ask you to do that, are they asking you to do the work for them? Are they asking for your opinions, your ideas? Are they asking for your presence? What are they asking for? Some people in those committees just sit there. Some people in those committees do all the work where that while the institution benefits off of their work and gives them none of the credit. So think about there are ways. I say this whole thing. These institutions have the funding to do it, but also in your own right, of course we all have things we can do to better it. So do that whenever you have the opportunities and the chances to make your communities better in a way that does not harm you. Obviously, do it. Right? That is how we can help. But at the same time, we know that there are some things that are out of our hands and out of our means, and that is okay. That is for these institutions and these organizations who say that they are centered on DEI for them to prove it. Put your money where your mouth is. Anyway, y'all, let us know what you think. We know we had a lot. We said a lot. We said a lot, and this conversation isn't over. And we want to continue these conversations not only on here, but in conversations with you away from here. So hope y'all enjoy this episode. This has been Relative Pitch. We'll see y'all next week. Bye.